Thank you for taking the time to watch this video presentation. I'm Randon Lessing, Leavitt Group of Boise Loss Control Specialist. In today's presentation, I'm going to provide a short overview of the visual workplace and discuss how this process is applicable to workplace safety. I believe that adopting the process we are going to discuss today will not only greatly benefit your safety program, but also streamline operations, increase efficiency, reduce waste, and develop roadmaps that will greatly improve your overall business. If you have any questions regarding the materials discussed today, please feel free to contact me. All of my contact information is listed on the slide. Dr. Galsworth is a leading expert in visual workplaces and defines a visual workplace as a self-ordering, self-explaining, self-regulation, and self-improvement work environment, where what is supposed to happen does happen on time, every time, day or night, because of visual solutions. If you are interested in adopting this approach, it is highly recommended that you visit Dr. Galsworth's website, which is listed here on the slide. This is an awesome resource which contains literature and other resources to assist an organization in implementing a visual workplace approach. Please note that visual workplaces is not limited to safety program applications. Operations, material handling, ordering, maintenance, and all the other departments will also benefit from adopting this approach. If your organization is considering a visual workplace, it is highly recommended that all departments play a role in deciding what and where to place all of the visual aids. With that being said, this concept is not original to me and it's not my idea. Many leading operational processes utilize this system, such as 5S, Toyota Way, Lean Six Sigma, just to name a few. If your organization already uses the approaches that I just discussed, it's highly likely that you already have some form of a visual workplace. Alright, so here is the basic layout of today's presentation. We're going to break down the visual workplace into 4 areas of focus areas. The first area is life safety. This includes evacuations, exit routes, fire suppression, and first aid. The next focus area is facility markings. This includes marking storage areas, electrical panels, equipment parking, and other general markings that will improve housekeeping and operating efficiencies. Material handling. This includes pedestrian walkways, a traffic control plan for equipment and trucks, lift tables, and other techniques. And also your safety program, hazard and danger markings, your lockout tagout program, HazCom, personal protective equipment, confined spaces, and several others. This chart is a brief color summary. Red represents danger. This is a major hazard which represents an immediate hazard to the employee. And it's also used to identify fire equipment locations. Orange, this represents warning. This is a hazard level between caution and danger. This is a situation that, if not avoided, can cause death or serious injury. Yellow represents proceed with caution. This is a minor or non-immediate hazard. Blue represents notice or general information. Safety. Green is general instructions for safe work practices and also the location of safety equipment. Another representation for the color orange is biohazard, contaminated biohazard containers as well. Just to keep in mind, these are the general guidelines for colors. There's obviously a lot of other colors that aren't listed here, and it is important that your company have a established operating procedure on what colors are going to be used for what. I do recommend that you adhere to these general guidelines, which are listed here on this chart as well as the chart on the next slide. This represents floor marking suggestions. Yellow tape represents aisleways, traffic lanes, work cells. White tape, production racks, machines, carts, benches, and all other equipment. This doesn't fall into another category. Red tape represents defects, scrap, red tag areas, etc. Orange Materials or products ready for inspection, or energize equipment warning. This is extremely applicable to lockout tagout applications. And then we have blue, green, and black. This is your raw materials, works in progress, or your finished goods. This is where your operating procedure specific to your company is important. You need to identify what these colors are going to mean within your facility and operation. Red, white hazards. These are areas to be kept clear for safety reasons. Emergency access points, electrical panels, firefighting equipment. Black and white stripes, areas to keep clear for operational purposes, for non-safety related reasons. Black and yellow, to designate areas that present special physical or health risks to employees, indicates that extra caution is to be exercised when working in that area. Establishing an internal operating procedure for floor markings and color is key to the overall success of your visual workplace program. It is recommended that the company establish guidelines that follow OSHA and other leading ANSI standards. Once an internal markings procedure is agreed upon, it is important that all employees receive training so they fully understand what the various markings and colors mean within their workplace. Life safety. This includes developing an evacuation plan that is specific to each one of your facilities. It is recommended in facilities with a large employee count to establish evacuation zones and evacuation marshals to gain accountability of all the employees once the facility is evacuated. This process is best facilitated by a detailed color-coded evacuation plan, as pictured here on the slide, as well as muster points, as also posted on this slide as well. Each department should have a facility evacuation plan posted there and have designated muster points outside the facility. This is where the evacuation marshals will assemble all the employees and gain accountability. This can be extremely difficult in large facilities, and from my experience, the best way to facilitate that process is to have these muster points and pre-designated employees that are trained and have a roster that can gain accountability of all the employees that work in that particular department. Mark all evacuation doors with exit signs and consider marking access points in front of the door on the floor. This will make sure that the exit is never blocked. This is extremely important in warehouse settings where it's very easy for materials and pallets to be placed all over the floor. Putting tape down, as you see pictured here on the slide, keep this area clear, is a great way to make sure that that exit route never does get blocked. All fire extinguisher and fire suppression equipment should be identified with signs, and you can also consider painting outlines where each extinguisher should be located, as pictured above in the slide as well. Doing the markings, as you see right here in the center of the slide, where you outline the fire extinguisher, that's a great way to make sure that if that extinguisher is ever removed for use or service or for any other reason, maintenance, that it is always replaced where it needs to go following that event. And this is also a great way for a visual inspection to make sure that all of your extinguishers are located where they need to be. Next, we're going to discuss a first aid station. This is a key part of your overall life safety plan within your facility or job site. These key areas can easily be used to improve communications with frontline employees and supervisors. Your first aid station should be clearly identified with a floor marking or a sign to make sure that it's clearly visible where that first aid station is located. At that station, you should also co-locate incident investigation forms and your facility or company emergency procedures. This ensures that the required documentation and your company guidelines are readily accessible throughout the job site and facility. A list of first aid responders. This is select staff that have received training on bloodborne pathogens, first aid, CPR, and how to use the AED machine. Their names and phone numbers should be clearly posted for others to call in case of an emergency. Posting those names and contact information near the AED and first aid kit is obviously a logical location to ensure that information is readily accessible to employees working on the floor to make sure that they can get somebody trained to operate that equipment over there. First aid kit should be accompanied with first aid logs for employees to log every time items are used or removed from the first aid cabinet. This will improve the cabinet's inventory control and offer insight to minor injuries that employees or supervisors may have failed to capture on incident investigation forms. This is valuable information for the management team to identify hazards and other problem areas that are causing injuries. Each first aid kit should also include an inventory list, ANSI Z308.1, which is a consensus standard of what items should be included in your basic first aid kit. This inventory list covers all the basics that employees would need and eliminates purchasing extra products that are not required by OSHA. I do see a lot of first aid kits that have all kinds of products that are far greater and beyond that ANSI standard. That's not required, and for large organizations, following the ANSI standard can save thousands of dollars on an annual basis. So posting that right there with the first aid to make sure that your inventory is in compliance. Just keep in mind, if you do follow that ANSI standard, that is all the requirements of OSHA as well. So you are compliant by following that standard. Facility markings. Your facility markings have major implications for not only your safety, but also operations and maintenance. This is a very broad category, and the markings will vary greatly based on the type of work that is performed within your job site or the facility. Some basic focus areas in the facility markings are clearly identifying restricted areas for internal company rules and purposes, or also for regulatory requirements such as your electrical rooms. All of these areas must be clearly marked with identified signage, such as restricted area, key personnel only, things of that nature. Key utility and equipment shutoff switches, such as water lines, should also be clearly identified on your facility maps and also marked where that particular shutoff valve is located. This will ensure that employees can quickly identify the switches for emergency and maintenance purposes. That's extremely important with water lines that can potentially be broken. Knowing where that shutoff valve is and get it shut off quickly can obviously save thousands of dollars in damages when that water line's broke. Also, another consideration is marking facility pipes to identify what contents flow through that particular pipe, whether it be air, water, gas, propane, ammonia, oil, etc. Understanding what type of line was cut or broken and identifying this information quickly is a very important loss reduction technique that could potentially save lives and obviously a lot of money in regards to the facility. This also makes the jobs of the facility personnel easier as well. Electrical panels and exit doors are required to be kept clear. Marking these areas with the appropriate clearance requirements is a proven method to ensure that you're regulatory compliant. It's common for employees to stack materials and other debris in front of electrical panels and other no-go zones, such as in front of your exit doors. So placing those floor markings is a visual aid to make sure, number one, that employees don't place materials there in the first place, but also that others can correct the issue as they're walking by. You know, if they see the material stacked in a marked zone, that they remove it and get it moved to where it needs to be and not blocking access to important equipment and materials. Marking the appropriate location for other equipment, such as your trash bins, brooms, dustpans, is also a proven method to improve your overall housekeeping and keeping your job site well organized. One of the photos in here is a facility that has multiple floor markings. As you can see, this greatly improves your housekeeping, and just from a visual, that is a well-organized facility. Eliminates trip hazards, which also is going to lend well for improving your overall safety program and making sure your job site is safe as it can be for your employees. Material handling. Road mapping operations and the flow of the materials throughout your operation will greatly increase the efficiency and make the facility a safer place to work. This process will require input from all of your departments. I can't stress enough that this function of doing this mapping cannot be solely placed on your safety department. It's really important that maintenance and your operations team also assist and help identify where the floor markings need to go in a way that's going to be efficient for the operation. Key focus areas when you're doing your material handling markings is identifying your pedestrian walkways, especially in a warehouse setting where there's a lot of forklift traffic, making sure you have designated walkways to prevent those powered industrial trucks from running into a pedestrian. Your lanes for your equipment traffic ways, such as your forklifts and your carts. Also, a traffic control plan for cars and trucks that may be traveling in and out of your job site, parking. All of those are considerations when it comes to this as well. Equipment parking when it's not in use. So where is the proper place for your dollies and your forklifts to be parked, your carts, making sure that they're out of the way from the operation. This also is a great loss control technique to prevent incidents as well. You should also mark your workstations with the appropriate clearance zones. There is a lot of equipment that has potential throwbacks and kickouts. You should have clearance zones marked around these areas to prevent other employees from entering that area unnecessarily and exposing themselves to a potential injury. Trash debris and bin locations, making sure all of that trash is being returned to a select location. That's a great housekeeping technique that will go a long way in keeping your facility clean. Finished products, staging areas, your shipping and receiving locations, and other considerations as well. Marking all of these in a way that's easy to understand will go a long way in your safety program, as well as helping your overall job site remain organized and efficient. We also have safety program considerations, which is also a very broad topic. And what applies to your particular operation is going to vary greatly, but we're going to cover the basics here. Several different signs and graphics are mandated by regulations and compliance, and there's also some signage that's going to be specific to your own facility safety program. Some of the considerations: your safety data sheet station. Each one of your facilities and job sites is going to be required to have a SDS paper binder readily available. It's important to mark that station with signs so all employees do know where they can access those SDS sheets. That's a HASCOM program requirement. Identify all confined spaces and all confined spaces that require permit entry. This process does require a thorough initial assessment by an employee that is knowledgeable on confined spaces and what type of confined space is going to require permit entry. All of these need to be marked with signage identifying them as a confined space, especially if they're permit entry and there's a known hazard within that confined space. Management should also consider permanently restricting your confined spaces permit entry. So in order for an employee to access that area, they're going to need to go through management to begin with. That can also eliminate the possibility of a employee making a tragic mistake in entering a confined space that is hazardous. All electrical or switch rooms should be labeled with caution warning and restrict access to only authorized personnel only. That needs to be labeled on all of your electrical rooms, your electrical panels, things of that nature. Personal protective equipment stations will be located throughout the facility at the various workstations. These stations must be equipped with the PPE that is required for that particular work task. What I mean by that is the PPE that you have for a spray paint booth is going to be very different than what PPE you're going to have posted near a chop saw. All of that needs to be determined by a site assessment or a job safety analysis for that particular workstation. Equipment that requires a lockout tagout procedure should be identified with graphics on that particular machine or equipment. The equipment specific lockout tagout procedure must be readily available to the employees authorized to perform the procedure. Placing this documentation and locks at a single lockout tagout station is a great way to ensure that you have number one, a lockout tagout program, and that it is actually compliant with OSHA regulations. I need to highlight the importance of having a lockout tagout procedure specific to the equipment. That's a common mistake I see in a lot of facilities, is they do have a general lockout tagout program. However, they do not have a procedure on how that particular piece of equipment needs to be de-energized. So that information needs to be written out, probably by your in-house safety team, and or maintenance, and needs to be available at the lockout tagout station or available to your maintenance team and your authorized staff that are going to be performing the procedure. Also, you have your warning and danger signs that need to be located near pre-identified hazards such as low clearance, electricity, slippery floor surfaces, things of that nature. These signs and symbols need to be placed in a manner that makes a hazard apparent to anyone in the vicinity of that general area. We're going to now talk about a workstation best practice. So this is definitely a manufacturing facility application where you have employees performing a routine task over and over, and most importantly, they're maybe using a piece of equipment or several pieces of equipment over and over and over again. That is a workstation, and there's a lot of methods here that can make that safe, and it will also be a telltale sign that your facility has a awesome and efficient safety program. OSHA requires the employer to assess each individual workstation to identify hazards and then eliminate or control the identified hazard. Safety programs is a system which can be clearly demonstrated and implemented with visible signs at each location. A common best practice is to implement the following postings at each workstation. Number one, a list of all the employees that have been properly trained to operate that equipment or to work in that workstation. Signs and lists of what personal protective equipment, PPE, is required at that workstation, such as eye protection, ear protection, gloves, aprons, face shields, etc. Having signage as well as a PPE station will ensure that employees are following through and wearing the PPE where it's required. The job safety analysis that is applicable to that workstation. This is a great training aid and a great reference for anyone that's working in the area. They can pull that JSA and see how the work is supposed to be performed at that particular station. This is also very important following an incident investigation, that the JSA is referenced to make sure that the employees were following the work protocol following the incident. Lockout tagout procedure, if applicable to the piece of equipment. This procedure, again, needs to be specific to that piece of equipment, and the locks required to perform the lockout tagout procedure, they need to be readily accessible, and the employees that are trained on doing the de-energizing procedure, the authorized personnel, they most definitely need to know where that lockout tagout station is and how to access the particular procedure to do that properly. Other danger and warning signs of identified hazards. As you can see there, we have that warning, keep hands away from the rotating blade, machine guarding, just to give you an idea of some of those signs that you can also place within that workstation. This workstation best practice is an extensive project, especially with facilities that have multiple workstations. Once the thorough hazard assessments are completed and a safe work practices are implemented, and you have your signage, you have your postings, you now have a thorough system to make sure that you have created a awesome and safe work environment for all of your employees. And again, it's going to be highly visible as soon as you walk in within the facility of what rules and what needs to be done to make sure that your employees are staying safe as possible. Process improvement. This has operation implications just as much as safety. This is an idea of a general board that can be placed within your facility, broken down into 4 different categories. Number 1 is your suggestions. This is a place where employees and supervisors can freely provide ideas and suggestions for improvement. They may be operation related or they may be safety related. But allowing this open forum for employees to communicate concerns and suggestions is a great way to develop your team. Action items are suggestions and other tasks that management and supervisors have assigned to specific employees or departments for execution. What gets tracked is what gets done. So placing these action items, who they're assigned to, that'll allow your supervisors to easily track when those items are completed and done. The next step is your monthly audits. Your monthly audit is going to be safety and operations related and should be readily available to all of your employees. For reference, housekeeping, this should include specific assignments. They may be routine tasks or they may be a non-routine housekeeping task, but assigning those, common thing is those assignments may be rotated on a weekly, monthly basis, what have you, but having those assigned and who's responsible for it is a great way. And that way, when you're doing an audit or a cross check and something's not done, it's easily to find out who didn't do their job, which makes sure that everyone's being held responsible and accountable for their particular assignments. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video on visual workplaces and safety applications. I did a 1,000-foot overview of this process. It's actually pretty intensive to implement a lot of what we talked about today. The road mapping process to make sure you identify signage and place it in a manner that's going to be effective for your particular operation is going to take time and brainstorming of your key personnel. Again, I can't stress enough that involving all departments in this process is extremely important. Safety, maintenance, operations, all of them need to be involved and play a role in doing the facility markings to make sure all of the bases are covered as you undergo this process. If you'd like more information, please give me an email, as you can see listed right here. I am more than happy to come out and do a facility visit and help you undergo this process and get a start on, at least at a minimum, identifying where a lot of the basic markings need to go with your fire suppression equipment, electrical panels, things of that nature. I appreciate your time. Thank you for taking a moment out of your day to watch this video. I hope that you've learned something and that this will benefit your overall organization. Have a great day and hopefully talk to you soon.